What's up, Taiwan? I'm Louise with news from here in Taiwan and around the world. Taiwanese chip-making giant TSMC has agreed to work with US unions, a breakthrough after months of labor disputes involving a new site. In a joint statement, TSMC and a coalition of Arizona-based unions said they'll now meet regularly to discuss safety and workforce development. TSMC's also said it'll prioritize hiring locally. That addresses concerns that Taiwanese engineers could take US jobs. Labor issues have already delayed the chip firm's $40 billion site in North Phoenix by a year. Global chip manufacturing is quickly expanding, with TSMC set to build its first European factory in Germany. To brace for the big demand for talent, local educators are sparing no time getting students up to speed. Joy Sung has more.
Learning from the best. That's what German engineering student Niklas Weber says he's most excited about. He's been selected to study abroad in Taiwan next year for a special program all about chips.
Taiwan is the leader of semiconductor production. So it's like, obviously, if you'd like to go to a place to learn about it, Taiwan is the place to go. For me, mostly the motivation comes from the automation.
Nicholas is one of 30 students going to Taiwan next March. They're getting a full-ride scholarship plus a roughly $750 monthly stipend, paid for by the Saxony state government. The aim? To prepare the area's next generation of tech leaders.
Then they will, let's say, be part of the university education program until June in the next year, and after that they will move for 8 weeks to TSMC for practical training.
Taiwan's TSMC leads the global chips industry as the maker of almost all of the world's most advanced semiconductors, the tiny silicon pieces that power everything electronic. They've been expanding their business overseas. The latest, a $10.8 billion joint venture for a plant in eastern Germany. But while some German students are eager to learn from the leading chip maker, some Taiwanese students hope their home country can learn from Europe, particularly from their approach to work.
很多博士生他们差不多5点就准时就走了，不会像台湾，如果你可能去台湾实验室，可能很多硕博士生就是5点后还在那边做研究。我觉得从这一点可以稍微看得出来，德国人非常重视自己的生活。
Concerns are mounting over whether TSMC will be able to fill its new sites in the West. It's already butted heads with U.S. labor unions in Arizona over different working styles, a culture gap that will also be tested in Germany. Getting a taste of TSMC's way of doing things in the training phase could help ease this transition. And with the pressure of attracting thousands of local workers, TSMC may also be taking notes from students like Nicholas. Delphine Chen and Joyce Zen for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan is the only country in Asia with an open civic space. That's according to a new survey released by a global alliance of civil action groups. In its People Power Under Attack report, the Civicus Alliance named Taiwan as one of just 37 countries that it considers open. It's the only one in Asia for the 5th straight year. The report finds civil freedoms generally worsening worldwide, with only a tiny fraction of the world's people living in open societies. A senior Justice Ministry official has been impeached in Taiwan pending drug trafficking charges. Xu Suliang, who led a team in the ministry's investigation bureau, was once recognized for his anti-drug efforts. Now he's accused of working with gangs to sell seized drugs and allegedly abusing his position to profit from smuggling. Several supervisors around him have also been charged. The Justice Ministry says it hopes Xu's impeachment will serve as a warning.
我会要求所有的法务部同仁及所属的相关人员一定要铭记在心。
Leaders from the EU and China are holding talks to address deep divisions over trade and the war in Ukraine. The summit in Beijing is the first of its kind in 4 years and comes at a time of increased tension. The EU is accusing Chinese firms of helping Russia evade Western sanctions, while China wants the EU to end an investigation into Chinese subsidies for electric cars. The talks also come a day after EU member Italy said it'll pull out of China's flagship Belt and Road trade initiative. EU officials told Reuters news agency they don't expect the summit to produce any concrete outcomes. For more, reporter Stash Butler spoke to EU-China scholar Zsuzsa Anna Ferenczi.
If we're going into this summit already expecting that nothing, concrete is going to come out of it, why hold a summit at all?
It is important to hold a summit and to keep channels of communication open in order to keep trying to get the message across. Whether the message gets across does not really depend on China as much as it depends on us and how consistent we are with our messaging. It's really thanks to China to a great extent that we are able to move closer together, because we are frustrated on the European side with how little China has done to address our grievances.
Do you think that the EU has understood China's concerns?
That's a good question. What are China's concerns? Because what we've seen coming out of China is a very assertive approach. I fail to see how the two sides can actually converge, having such different language and such different expectations from each other. So I believe that the European side has been trying to adjust and recalibrate its approach. I fail to see how China is rethinking its approach towards Europe. And I completely fail to see how China has understood how important the Ukraine issue is for Europeans. So not only does China not play a constructive role in that sense, but China has been refusing to even talk about it.
You mentioned how Ukraine is one of, obviously, the major grievances the EU has in this relationship. How big of a role will Taiwan play in these talks?
Taiwan remains a difficult issue to discuss with China because China refuses any dialogue on issues that it considers of core national interest. Given how different the two positions are, I don't expect Taiwan to really be prominent on the agenda, but I do expect for the European side to maintain that position that Taiwan is important, that strategically speaking, the EU needs to take into consideration the impact of tension growing in the Indo-Pacific.
That was Zsuzsa Anna Ferenczi from National Donghua University speaking to Stash Butler. Ukraine has given the US a list of weapons it says are needed to repel Russian invaders. Kyiv asked for fighter jets, drones, helicopters and advanced missile defense systems at a closed-door conference in Washington. But the US Senate is blocking an aid and security assistance package for the country, possibly ending US funding for its war effort. The United States has provided Ukraine with over $100 billion since Russia launched its invasion last year. The US says it's grounding all its Osprey military aircraft. It comes a week after 8 service members died in a crash off the coast of Japan. The Osprey is a US-made hybrid aircraft that can take off vertically, similar to a helicopter. There are more than 450 in service, but worries about its safety have grown after several fatal crashes in recent years. The Pentagon is calling for a temporary halt on its use while it checks to see what the problem is. The United States says it's closely monitoring reports of Chinese warships docked at a naval base in Cambodia. Cambodia's defense minister says China's navy was visiting the Southeast Asian nation to help train the Cambodian military. It follows reports that Beijing and Phnom Penh signed a deal in 2019, giving China exclusive access to parts of the base. The US says it has serious concerns about China's plans to control the base. Cambodia says it hasn't given any country exclusive access to the facility. A global study of teenagers' maths, science and reading skills shows some of the sharpest declines in the survey's 20-year history. Tiffany Wong reports.
Traditional learning, no longer limited to a classroom. The COVID-19 pandemic changed the way young students learn, as many had their schooling interrupted by distance learning or full school closures. And that interruption is reflected in a survey by the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. The study found that in 2022, 15-year-old students from 81 countries performed significantly worse in math and reading tests than when the OECD began studying students' learning capabilities 20 years ago. However, experts say the pandemic is only partially to blame.
The pandemic certainly played some role. We see clearly that countries like Brazil that closed schools for longer had in generally a disadvantage in terms of learning outcomes. But we've seen other trends. You could see, digital distractions. And that is true also for students in Brazil. There's a high share of young people basically feeling anxious, distracted by their digital devices in classrooms. I think that's a factor.
However, some countries saw improvements in student performance. Singapore, which had high vaccination rates, topped all subjects. And Taiwan and Japan, which implemented strict border control policies, scored in the top 5 in every subject.
我们学校被真的完全shut down的时间，相对于别的国家比起来是相对少的。即使我们学校还是有停课了这个状况下，可是所有的老师反应非常的快，赶快导入数位学习或是网络的学习。
The study is the first to measure changes in learning outcomes since the pandemic, bringing alarming news to educators, who say that even in the highest performing countries, interruptions to early education can manifest not only inside the classroom, but also in workplaces later on, meaning this is an issue policymakers across the globe will continue to face in the coming years. James Lin and Tiffany Wong for TaiwanPlus.
A theatre group in New Taipei is combining traditional performance with modern technology to bring old stories to new audiences. Louise was there to check out their act.
Leaping, flipping, and singing among the crowd. This technological Taiwanese musical smashes through the fourth wall and puts the audience right in the middle of the action. This is Flying Goddess, a new immersive theatre experience that tells traditional Chinese legends through a mix of mediums, including 360-degree projections that transform the theatre into a living, breathing world. But performing alongside virtual characters brings new challenges to the actors.
期待当然是因为像这样子沉浸式，然后我们到这个空间里面，我们可能对于画面，然后跟舞台上一定会是完全不一样的。那我们会重新在里面做调配跟设计。
By interacting with the elaborate animations, the cast bring to life mythical beasts from Chinese folklore and recount epic tales of love and war. One story even warns of the disastrous effects humans are having on the planet. Bringing together a range of performance elements and integrating them with technology was core to director Wu Xingguo's vision.
但是我们有太多好的作品在全世界演过，那么有我们很多丰富的经验，然后我们把这一些整个集合起来放在一个科技里面，我觉得这个创举是未来的。
The team behind Flying Goddess are hopeful that performances like theirs can attract people young and old, and inspire a new kind of theatre that makes the audience a part of the story. Klein Wang and Louise for TaiwanPlus.
Thank you for watching What's Up Taiwan. If you liked today's program, you can visit the TaiwanPlus website or our social media for more news. Before we go, check out photographer Mika Ninagawa's exhibition Eternity in a Moment, which is on display in Tokyo. I'm Louise Watt. Take care, and I'll see you next time.